Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of B Conference. I hope everyone is having as much fun as we are over here. Yesterday was so terrific with our panel and our yoga and Eva Longoria, and today is going to be just as exciting. Starting now, I'm going to be speaking to a group of incredible actors, producers, directors, Mädchen, Amick, Niecy Nash, and Jessica Yu. These are women who really embody the power of storytelling and have used their talents for social change. So we'll get to talk to these incredible women for about an hour. After that, those of you who've signed up to get mentored will have your sessions with the mentors you've been matched with. If anybody on here still would like to sign up to get mentored, we can include you in the Thursday session. And to do that, you would need to go to bconferences.com and get the full access pass. Some other stuff I want to talk to you guys about is that a great way to stay connected to this community of amazing people that you're getting to meet here at B Conference is to check out our Wrap Women community. It's just wrapwomen.com. There's lots going on there. We have events going on later in the year. We're going to figure out how to extend some of the conversations that have gone on yesterday that started on our Wrap Connect Slack channel. So many interesting connections and issues that were raised there. And I also wanted to invite those of you who are really looking to build your careers in entertainment to check out our Wrap Pro service. And that is really the place where you find exclusive news and analysis and insights on what is happening in the industry during this super tumultuous and difficult, in some ways, time of change, written every day by TheWrap's top journalists. So you can sign up at TheWrap.com/join. You can get a free 7-day trial. But because you are attending B, we have a very special offer for you guys that will come to your email. So you might want to wait for that. So excited to tell you about that. So here we go for this panel. I'm going to be talking to our panelists for about 40 minutes or so. After that, we will be taking audience questions for about 20 minutes. Everybody should feel like you can participate. I see people are already adding their comments to the chat, which is amazing. Share your thoughts on social media. We're using the hashtag BCon2020. If you tag us at TheWrapWomen on Twitter or at WrapWomen on Insta, we'll amplify your share. And then after the panel, if you're an all-access ticket holder, you can join your fellow attendees on the Wrap Connect Slack channel to meet each other, talk about what you've learned, share insights, and all of that. So we look forward to all of that. And then here, let me introduce our incredible panelists today. So our first panelist, Mädchen Amick, is best known for her work on the television series Twin Peaks, where she starred as Shelley Johnson, a role that director David Lynch created for her and one that she reprised in the recent Showtime revival. In addition to that, she starred as Alice Cooper on CW's Riverdale. She also directed the season 4 cliffhanger finale. And most recently, she's produced and directed a documentary, Behind the Curtain, which takes a close look at all aspects of mental health, from diagnosis and treatment to big pharma and politics. Welcome, Mädchen.
Hi.
Hi. Our next panelist is Niecy Nash, a regular at Wrap events. We love having her. She's an Emmy-winning producer and Emmy-nominated actress. She currently stars in TNT's drama, Claws, and she was in this year's Lifetime film, Stolen by My Mother. Her recent credits also include HBO's Getting On, the Ava DuVernay series, When They See Us, Fox's Scream Queens, Showtime's Masters of Sex, and she develops television and film projects through her own company, Chocolate Chick Inc. Welcome, Niecy.
Hello, everyone.
And finally, I'm so honored to welcome Jessica Yu, who won an Academy Award for her documentary short, Breathing Lessons, The Life and Work of Mark O'Brien. A while ago now, Jessica, right? And she was recently nominated for an Emmy and a DGA Award for her directing on Fosse Verdon. Her episodic credits include Hollywood, Billions, 13 Reasons Why, This Is Us, American Crime, The West Wing, and the Netflix comedy special, Old Baby. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
Yay! How are you like? Let me just start by like, how are you doing? Pandemic, shut in. How are you holding up? Jump on in. I see Mädchen's taking a deep.
I will say I'm making the best out of it. I've been trying to curate different experiences all around my house. So if it's a spa day, I try to find a space for that. If it's an outdoor picnic in the backyard, I try to find a space for that. So I'm just trying to make the best out of it.
Yeah.
Mädchen, Jessica, how about you guys? How are you like mentally? Is it challenging? Are you able to do your work? I mean, as an actress, Mädchen, it's harder, of course, impossible.
Yeah, we were shut down early when we were finishing the last season of Riverdale. I was in LA on my third of 4 days editing the episode that I directed, and we were shut down, sent home. And so it was just a little bit of like, okay, I wonder how long this is going to last for, and what does this mean for the rest of our season? And so it ended up that we had a shorter season, and then now just the getting everything in order so that we can go back to work safely is taking longer. So we're heading back to work a lot slower. So at first I was treating it like, okay, this is fine. It's just an early hiatus. It's, and then little by little, the anxiety started to grow. Like, oh, are we ever going to go back to work? Are we, so those kind of things started creeping in. So I tried to focus on being creative with my own projects, and then a lot of gardening, like hours and hours of gardening, and to the point where my husband's like, okay, you need to come inside now. Oh, it's getting ridiculous. Come inside now.
Did you find that? I mean, I think so many of us have been finding hobbies at home. I will confess to jigsaw puzzles. Something I haven't done since camp years. It's just like I can focus on that and not think about the news. Jessica, how have you been spending this time?
Well, yeah, I mean, like everybody else, I mean, I thought I was going to be in production. The whole family was going to be scattered for the summer. We really weren't going to see much of each other. And now we have this unexpected family time. So that part's been great. And then also just a lot of developing, writing. So yeah, I mean, definitely trying to grasp at the silver linings, but the family time has been pretty great.
Are you writing, or are you just waiting are you like reworking scripts, or are you?
Yeah, well, I have a project with Kerry Washington's company with the co-writer, and so that's moving forward, which is great. So we've been working on that and a couple other projects. So yeah, some writing, some prepping, even a little bit of doc shooting. So just keeping it, keeping all the balls in the air.
How are you shooting a doc? How's that going?
Oh, it's a project. We're doing some research shooting here in LA, and it's weird though, right? Like, I mean, production is so strange. Our crew might be like 2 people. I might be shooting, it's very, so just trying to find ways to keep it safe. But I gotta say, it feels just good to be out and like shooting something. So that's been, just a little glimpse, just keeping the dream alive,
Yeah, exactly. I think so many of us, it's like when we planned this, by the way, this conference was supposed to be in April. And so we had to completely rethink about how we were going to do this. But some of the stuff has silver linings, it feels like, because imagine probably you're going to maintain that love of gardening going forward. Niecy, I don't know you've been actually pretty busy because you have these Emmy campaigns going on for your performances this year, which have been just incredible. We had you on just to talk about your role in Stolen by My Mother, just about that. So you've been pretty busy, right?
Well, yes. I mean, in that, some of these things you're doing them in such an unconventional way, but you still have to be, on the campaign trail to promote your projects.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there's been a lot of get yourself dolled up and sit in front of the computer today.
Okay, well, you look very nice today, if I may say.
Yeah.
Well, we did talk. We had a prep call for this conversation last week. We all felt that it was important to talk about this change that's going on in the country, which is really penetrating media and entertainment, which is this reckoning over systemic racism in our society. And so many of the things that we've talked about at Wrap Women over time, which is gender equity and how we become a more inclusive industry, because it's so influential. What all of you do has so much impact on the world. How do we reflect the world better? But now it feels like it's much more urgent, much more intense. Are each of you feeling like this is an exciting and positive change, or is it something that makes you worry that we're not going to actually actualize this uprising that we're seeing, this desire for change?
Yeah. What gives me hope is the very public awareness, and a lot of people taking to the streets even during a time that you're supposed to be staying home, and it seems like everybody's doing their part in staying safe and wearing masks, and so there's that positive part that I'm loving and embracing, and then there's also this little thing in the back of my head that goes, okay, but what now? What do we really implement? How do we really make that change and not just have it be a rise up and then back to status quo, because this has been a problem in our country from day one. And I've been watching and wanting to support everything that's been going on, and I've been careful not to jump in too much with my own story, because I don't want to take up the airspace for people that need to really discuss things that are happening to them directly. And I just hope that I hope it really implements change.
But you do have a personal story, and I think it is worth sharing. I hope you'll tell our listeners about how this impacts you personally.
Yeah, sure. So I met my husband in '87, and he's African and Spanish mix. And we have two beautiful children that are 26, and my son just turned 28.
Oh my God, you have a 28-year-old child.
I know. They're like big humans now, but will always be my babies. And it's been an interesting journey, because I met my husband before I did Twin Peaks. And, my husband and I would go on the red carpets and go to events, and I was targeted by white supremacy groups, about mixing races and, death threats, and having to have police protection and a detective on our case for a long time. And it drove my husband and I into just being very, very, very private, being very careful, and then having this beautiful mixed ethnicity family that we'd love to just celebrate. I had to be very careful, and we were very private about our kids and where we lived and where they went to school, and to the point where they would be registered in school under a pseudonym. Mm-hmm. And we moved to New York, and then moved out to Connecticut, and were really impacted by a lot of racism in Connecticut that we actually fought back in a court case for racism. And it's this sort of like this persona that people want to come off as being liberal, and we're all under the same umbrella in the same tent, but we're not. And they were trying to drive us out because they didn't want homeowners that had a different ethnicity than themselves. And so they messed with the wrong family, first of all. But, we had to walk through that. And, I think as a family, as a very tight family of four, it was sad that we had to have those conversations with our kids, that, you're going to be treated differently because you have brown skin.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So. Nissi, you've really expressed some of the intensity in your work. We've spoken for the role you played in When They See Us, which is, it was that experience of seeing it. Every time I even think of it, I just feel so emotional. And you've spoken about your own raising a young Black man as a mother yourself. Talk about how you channel your sense of social justice into the work that you've been doing.
Well, I will tell you that for the rest of my life, henceforth and forevermore, I will always be a Black mother, and that's not going to change. So when I stand in a character who is also a Black mother, we are already so connected and so bonded in so many ways. And pedigree does not change that. You know, right after we all saw, when I say we all, I mean the world saw what happened with George Floyd, when we saw a man be murdered right in front of our eyes. Maybe not that long thereafter, my son leaves my house and is stopped by the police. Now, they pull a taser on him, they do the whole, and they keep it on him the whole time while they run the license, the registration, and make sure, you know, all of those things were in order. But my point being that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. It matters what you look like. And the pain of that is palpable. And so when I try to approach characters, there's always a place where I want us to intersect. There's a place where I want to be able to, you know, bake a little more reality in. And in some of these spaces and cases, or roles, I should say, it's it's as easy as looking in the mirror to try to find that common ground.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that has also made your performance so incredibly powerful, which is, you know, a gift. You know, you're using that. Jessica, as the director among our panelists here, tell us how you're responding to this discussion, this national reckoning. I'm going to call it a reckoning. And I also just want to mention, because I can't help but feel that it's just the next parallel version of what the Me Too movement was for women. You know, this major change where people had to stop and think, how are we going to change the stuff that we didn't want to see, we didn't want to know was happening? Now you can't unknow it. It's real. Right. How is it impacting you?
Right. Well, first I was just like absorbing the stories that Niecy and Mädchen have been telling and sharing. And you know, I grew up in a household with parents who were very politically active. You know, they were involved in the anti-war movement. As little tiny kids, we were brought to, you know, the picket line to support farm workers. And so growing up, that was just always part of the fabric of the family. So it's something that I think when I got into filmmaking and wanted to tell stories and everything, I came up through documentaries. And so telling stories that, or exploring, you know, issues of whether it's climate change, just disability rights, that just felt like something that was something that, you know, you should spend time doing. And then getting into scripted content, you don't always have control over the stories you're telling. You're also honing your craft. But I would say one thing that I really learned from my background and coming up in documentaries is that you always need to have something that going parallel that really means something to you, you know, something that reminds you of why maybe you wanted to get into telling stories in the first place. So I think the big difference I see right now is that these conversations about, you know, about race, about police brutality, about social justice, like it is part and parcel of our lives right now. You know, at the dinner table, I think before there's this idea, oh, you know, or at most dinner tables, oh, we don't talk about those things, right? Now that's what we talk about, our kids talk about. And I think that is the indication that there's more of an appetite for these stories, that it is something, it's a place that people want to go to. So when we get into production again, when we can start telling these stories again, I think that there's going to be more room at the table for this. So it does give me hope. The project that I'm developing with Kerry Washington's company, it's it's a project where it's Asian American characters, Latinx characters front and center in a way that I think I can't imagine it happening even just a couple of years ago. And so that does.
Great. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Yeah.
What can you tell us, like, what's the plot a little bit?
Oh, it's actually, so it's based on this novel by Lillian Lee. We've been writing it together, and her book is called Number One Chinese Restaurant. And it's about, the generational mix of Chinese American family with this restaurant. And it also includes the drama with the back of the house, because you have, recent immigrants who are working, and it's not always that everyone's helping each other come up. So it's about that sort of those complicated layers. So anyway, it's just been a total pleasure because the material is great, but also because we really feel like there's this momentum that these stories can actually get through.
And I'm going to jump in and say, Jessica, I am so excited for your project, because oftentimes I will hear in an interview, they will name names like, well, Niecy, you're in this, and Viola Davis is in that, and Kerry Washington is in that, and therefore, don't you think there's equity? And I'm like, no. You know how many other women there are in the world besides Black and white women?
Yes.
You have Asian women, Muslim women, trans women, African women. I mean, it just, no, the world is so much bigger than Black and white. And it seems to be, once they see that, they're like, guys, we've got it settled.
Yep.
Also, Niecy, don't you feel like sometimes stories, it's like they just get siloed. Like, this story has to be about the Asian American experience, and it's just Asian stuff. And you're like, that's not how the world works. It's not like we go to Asian land and we hang out with, and do all the Asian things,
Because I'll get asked in an interview sometimes like, oh, it's rapid fire time. And here's going to be some fun questions. Name your favorite this or that. And when they get to favorite movie, one of my favorite all-time movies in the entire world is The Joy Luck Club. And they're like, what? It's a great movie. What do you want?
Yeah, no. That's my. That's supposed to be my movie, right?
Right.
Well, I think it's so much to the point. Like, we were talking yesterday on the panel about intersectionality, what that means. Eva Longoria was talking about that yesterday, about how it can't just be about Latinx people and not about Black people. Because you wouldn't look at Mädchen and think, you would never experience racism. Like, what are you talking about? Or Jessica, you won an Academy Award when you were 10, probably. I don't know. How old were you? You must have been like a child, practically.
No, it was a while ago. It was a long time ago.
I remember I was at those Oscars, just like for the record. So in the audience. So it made an impression on me. But in any event, you can't be fair to one underrepresented group and not be fair to everybody. I think that's what I'm speaking.
Yeah.
You guys live it, it.
And also, two points is, number one, it's great that now it's going to be sort of hopefully mandated, but maybe a little more in fashion to tell stories of different ethnicities. And that's great. Absolutely. We have to start there. And great that we have representation now behind the camera with directors and producers and writers. But until I start seeing the diversity in the heads of the studio, the heads of the network, and people making financial decisions, is when we will truly see change. Otherwise, it's going to be a fad. It's going to be like, oh, we're casting a lot of Latin characters this season, and then no, we're doing African characters this season. We're doing Asian characters. It's like, until we really start making true executive decisions, is when I think we'll actually see the true change.
I'd like to back up a minute, because most of the people, we have hundreds of people who are listening right now. They're really from all over the world, which is really exciting. I think that what they want to know is sort of, how did you make your way into this industry? Because everybody has a different story. Can we just take a few minutes and back up and say, and Mädchen, so let's start with you. How did you even get into acting, and how did you break in?
I grew up in Reno, Nevada, actually Sparks, Nevada for a little bit, and then into Reno, a small town. And my dad was a musician, so I had art in the blood, and just started as a young age. I was dancing, I was painting, I was playing music. And it really wasn't until I got into high school theater that and I always went to the movies, and I would see 2, 3 movies in a row, and it was like this little escape. And I just was a huge fan of films. And so then when I got into high school theater is when it just really um, struck me that that's what I wanted to do. So actually at age 14, I went to visit my sister who was living in LA at the time. And while I was down there, I sort of concocted this plan of like, okay, I want to get into the industry. I want to get into it sooner than later, because all the stories I would read would be like, you got to start young. And I said, okay, I'm gonna try to model, do commercials, music videos, anything I can to pay the bills until I can get my acting career off the ground. So I went down to LA at 14, finagled my way into elite models. I'm like 5'5", 5'5.5". They don't see anybody under 5'7" or 5'8". And you know, found my way to one of the agents, and she said, you know, they're going to kill me for this, but if you come back in 2 years at 16, emancipated, we'll represent you. You'll never be able to do runway, but I think we can get some work off of you in print. And I came back at 16. I went home and I talked to my parents, and I presented this very laid out, very, you know, planned out plan. And I made a deal with them. If I couldn't provide for myself within a year, I'd come back home and revisit and try to figure out what to do from there, go back to school or whatever I needed to do. So I was really driven to make it within that year. And my mom just told me, actually, just not too long ago, she said, you know that you started paying for yourself within 3 months. You took over everything. So I just was, I had a drive, I had a plan, and just worked really, really hard from the moment the sun came up to the moment the sun went down, auditioning for anything and everything. And then just eventually, you know, caught hold, and then Twin Peaks kind of changed everything.
That's amazing. Persistence and focus. Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Jessica, how about you? What was your path in?
Yeah, I mean, right, no one has a normal path. I don't know what that would be, but for me, I kind of fell into production because after college, I was fencing competitively and trying to figure out what kind of job I could have and still travel, just leave all the time. So I got work as a PA on some commercials. You know, my first job was arranging frozen noodles on plastic forks. So feeling all the glamour from the get-go. So I just really learned on the job because I didn't go to film school, but I got really excited when I started helping out on documentary shoots, because you're really shorthanded. So like on my first job, I was out there like helping record sound. And so it just the hands-on nature of it. And everybody in documentaries, of course, is really passionate about what they're doing. Nobody's in it for the money, certainly. So that's kind of where I started to come up. And then getting into episodic, into scripted content, I was so lucky that it was actually John Wells of John Wells Productions. At the time, they had The West Wing, ER, Third Watch. His company invited me in to observe and to learn, and they guaranteed me that I would be able to direct an episode, and that was just a game changer. I mean, I still don't know like why they picked me. I kept thinking like on the first day, like, do they know that I come out of documentaries, and that at my last doc shoot, like base camp was my parents' house. You know, there was it was such a big leap, but they really supported me in learning that. So that's how I ended up going into the scripted side.
That's amazing. So somebody saw something in you there. John Wells was a kind of mentor for you then, in a way.
Well, I was like the guinea pig for what turned into a short program. And so and it's because actually there was one of those, you know, just devastating studies about the number of women directing episodic TV at the time. And I think it was something crazy, like out of 500 episodes, there were like 8 directed by women, something like that. So I definitely went in thinking, okay, you know, if you screw this up, they're never going to let anybody, you know, like you do this again. So, and then of course the numbers didn't change for a long time. And I'm like, I guess you didn't really, you know, like it was really
Yes.
for a while to sort of see the momentum changing. And I do feel like the tide has been turning. And that's why right now the shutdown feels, I mean, I hope we can come back sooner because there's momentum there. I've got women friends who have their first pilots and they're just waiting, and I would love to see this continue.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. Niecy, how about you? Tell us your story.
I'm laughing because you said somebody saw something in you, Jessica, and I'm gonna tell you, nobody saw a thing in me. But let me tell you what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful because it put me in a space and a place where I realized quickly that it's not called mama esteem, daddy esteem, them esteem. You know, it is self-esteem. And I didn't need anybody to believe what I feel like God told me my path was. And I'm unconventional in the sense that when I decided I was going to be an actor, and I decided there was a particular project I was going to be in, I did not have an agent, I did not have a manager. I picked up the phone and I called casting, and I said, "This is Niecy Nash. I'm broke. I got a baby, and I need a job." And they said, "Be down here at 3:00." And I said, "I'm on my way." And then I went to a producer session, which is what I showed up for. It was a film called Boys on the Side with Whoopi Goldberg, Drew Barrymore, and a very young Matthew McConaughey was also in it. And I read under 5 lines, and they said, "Thank you." And I said, "You're welcome." And they said, "Thank you." And I said, "Don't mention it." They said, "Thank you, you may go." And I said, "Oh, y'all are dismissing me. Well, did you pick me? Because I told that man over there I needed to take care of my baby." And when I tell you the biggest mess, it was a mess. They was like, "Little girl, you got to get out of here." And then I started fussing, and I told them it was not fair that I drove all the way across town, and shame on you. But I did not know how it worked. So while I was fussing and making a big fuss in the room, the director looked at casting and said, "She's adorable." And I mean, and there you have that.
And then you got the role. They gave it to you.
Eventually, not on that day, but they did call and offer it to me, and I was able to go to New York and film it, and almost missed being in the whole movie because when they said somebody is going to come and pick you up, I thought, in a Toyota Camry, some boy named Jeremy was going to drop me off. And when I saw the limo in front of my house, me and my mother looked out the window for 30 minutes because we thought the lady next door died. So I almost missed
You see, you already won off.
See, but I think for everybody who's watching, I think if you just take little nuggets of all of our stories, with Jessica just willing to do whatever it took, being a PA, wrapping up utensils, to Niecy saying, "No, you're going to cast me because you're going to cast me." And, it kind of reminds me of, like, I think one of my first acting jobs was, I think it was one of the soap operas, and I think it might've been General Hospital. I don't remember, but I had a one-line job, like I came in and I got one line, and that was like a big deal because you got one line. And it was just supposed to be, "Happy birthday." And the camera's rolling, the door opens, the actress says her line, and I say, "Happy birthday. It's so great to see you. Where's the drinks?" And they pulled me aside and said, "You can't do 3 lines. We're not paying you for 3 lines." And I was like, No. You don't have to pay me for 3 lines, but just keep the 3 lines in." And they're like, "Okay." But it's that hunger and that drive in that, because it's going to be hard, and there are no rules, and there is no real perfect format for you to follow. It just takes determination, willing to put the work in, and hanging in for as long as you can. I always say it's like we're on the bow of a boat going through a storm in the ocean. Whoever can hang on to the rails of that boat the longest is the one that can say I have a career in it, because it's going to keep trying to knock you down and wash you off.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Well said.
At what point did each of you decide that you needed to start your own production company so that you could have some, control over the decisions the choices you were able to make?
I feel like for me, it was when I started to create my own content. Once I decided like this is what I want to do, and there wasn't someone knocking on my door saying, "Hello, ma'am, would you like to do thus and so?" When I realized that I could just create my own content was when I knew it was time.
That's nice.
I mean, with documentaries, it's a little different. Like I remember making my own little kind of like fake letterhead to look like I had a company. So it's always been a slightly scrappier practice on that end. But yeah, I mean, right now it's not like I think Niecy and Mädchen can speak to that more.
For me, I always in my head wanted to tell my own stories and be a part of creating it from the ground up. I would read scripts and I would immediately visualize it. I knew I had more to offer. But I was young. I was 18 when I first got started, and then had a family young. I had my children at 21 and 22, and so then it became just survival mode. Try to get enough work to raise the kids and have a family that can stay together. And we made a lot of sacrifices within our family where I would, you can't dictate where the work is. So sometimes I would be on the other coast and having to commute back to still be in my kids' lives and just hustling from day one. And so I always knew that I wanted to. I felt like I couldn't sort of afford to take the time to do it. And there may have been a little bit of not enough representation to show me that there were women in those positions that are doing this and can do it and will be hired to do it. There was a few little nuggets here and there. Diane Keaton directed an episode of Twin Peaks, and it certainly really stood out to me. I think more than any other director. I was like, there's a woman directing. And Leslie Linka Glatter is another amazing director that I've worked with a few times over the years, but she has a stellar career, and that really showed me that there was a path. And it really wasn't until our family went through a bigger issue, which is mental health issues, that it gave me the inner drive to make my own content, because I don't feel that mental health issues are being represented in film and television enough or correctly. And so that gave me the guts to finally step behind the camera, create my own content, and start directing and creating projects. So that's what finally kind of kicked me in the ass. Said, do it. You've got something to say.
It's amazing. Yeah, who wanted to say?
I was gonna say, like, it's such a good point. Like, it's hard to underestimate the role of representation, right? Like, if you see somebody that you can identify with, it just becomes like your delusions seem to be something that can actually happen. And I just still remember the very first day I was directing on The West Wing, and I go and I park in the right up by the stage in the designated director parking space. And I get out of my car, and this elderly security guard comes up, and he's like, "Oh, miss, I'm sorry, only the director's supposed to park there." And I look at him, I'm like, I know it's weird for me too.
Yeah.
But like that's where we were back then, and yeah. Anyway.
No, but we're still there now. We're still there now. I still see the attitudes of crew members and even cast members when a female director comes on. There's certain things because as women, just in general, we communicate differently, and so it's not that like, kind of do this, do that. It's a little bit like, what do you think about doing this? What do you think about doing that? And sometimes I see those a little more conservative crew members go like, oh, here we go, woman taking the reins again, so it's still there.
Two things. One, I don't care about that. I directed my episode of Claws, and when I get the opportunity to tell somebody what to do, I'm gonna tell you, and I'm gonna be
good.
So I love that. I love that part of it. The other thing I was going to say is I had my children early too. And I just want to shout out people who have to take care of other people and still manage to live your dream. Because sometimes it can appear as though it's daunting and exponentially harder for you to get it figured out. But I got married the first time. I'm a serial wife, by the way.
I like it.
I got married the first time, I think at like 20 or 21, and started my family. And, and I remember having to take 3 kids to the casting office and set up the corner like a little preschool. You know what I mean? You get a baby to bye-bye, get a cracker, you sit there, get a coloring book, and try to make these kids behave for this short moment while I'm in there. And so just shout out to the women who still have other responsibilities and still get in there and figure it out. I remember one time I went into a casting and I could not get anyone to take my youngest daughter, and she was like this kind of baby, like a, you holding it right here. And
on the hip.
Another lady in there, a young actress, and she was reading her lines, and I going over her script, and I said, "Hey, girl," and she was like, "Hello," and I was like, "Oh, where you from?" And she was just like, "Oh my God, will you stop acting like?" I could tell she was getting so irritated because she was trying to look at her words. And they said, "Niecy Nash," and I said, "Girl, could you hold this for me?" And I had her my baby, and the whole time I was in there, I was like, "God, don't let her steal my child." But you do what you gotta do.
You do. I got to second that. Big shout out to the moms out there. Really, like, it's an incredible feat. Those of you who are pursuing your dreams while raising a child or children, but it's worth it. It's worth it, right?
I had a family member. I'm not going to call them out directly because I'm just not going to do that. That said to me when I was pregnant, and they said, "Oh, well, you had a good career while it lasted." And I was like, "Oh no. We're all doing this together. We're still going to do this. Be a baby on each hip, and just making it work." Thank goodness I had a husband that was so supportive and took over when I had to go to work. So grateful for that. But yeah, it's interesting. The mindset of, can you be a mom and still be a career woman? Yeah, you can. It's hard. You got to put the work in, but absolutely.
I think that's also why we've been beating this drum to have women in positions of authority, because women do it and they know that it's doable. It's really more, folks who, if you don't have that recognition in a position of power, it's like, oh, how are you going to be able to do that? It's like, well, we're just going to do it like we do everything else. We're just going to figure it out. And we don't always take it as far as Niecy did, because she's got cojones. Okay, let's take some questions, and we love her for her cojones. All right, ready for some questions. Here we go. Here's a question for Mädchen from Aurora Olivieri. Welcome. My mental health has really been going downwards recently, and I feel like whatever I do, I can't feel better. Do you have any tips on what I can do?
Well, I mean, I would say, first of all, just the fact that you asked that question and you reached out is amazing and a great first step, because you're vocalizing that you're not feeling good, and that's okay. There's a lot of us that aren't feeling good, especially right now, being cooped up and not being able to do your normal routine, and you're having to sit with your anxieties and your depression and fears and all of that. So I would just encourage you to continue that path of reaching out. If there's anybody within your circle of friends or family members that you feel safe talking about this with them, and then, it might even be reaching out. NAMI, NAMI, is an amazing mental health organization that is available in the States and also around the world. And they're just a really good resource for you can pick up the phone, call the hotline, say, this is what I'm feeling, and they can connect you with resources wherever you live. So I would really encourage that as well. I've actually been doing regular check-in therapy sessions with my therapist because things just bubble up, and fears about how my kids are doing all this, how my mom's doing, just my own anxieties. So really reach out, know that you've got support and you've got other people out there that are feeling so similar to what you are, and don't be afraid to do that. We're all in this together, honestly.
It's great. Great. Thank you, Aurora. Here's another one. Okay, to all the panelists, this is from Alex Vela M. How do you balance using your platform or stories to generate consciousness while still giving a voice to the people directly affected by it?
Well,
Go ahead, Niecy.
I guess what I would say to that is, you have platforms in social media. You can use your platform in social outlets. You can use your influence and your voice for those who are directly affected by it, by linking arms with them, by even curating, before COVID and dinner parties or events, and even since then, like conversations like the ones we're having right now, I think is the best way to let people know I hear you, I see you, and I stand with you. And when the art intersects it all, it's even better.
And I would say too, Niecy, I've been when this whole movement of Black Lives Matter and this real awakening that's been happening in our country, there's a lot. My instinct was sort of like, I want to give the time and the space for people directly affected by it, the voice and the room, and I don't want to like chime in and take up that airspace. But yet also let everyone know that I support it and I stand with you. So that's been interesting for me, who I am directly affected by it because of my family, but also, just being a white American, I'm not directly affected by it the way my husband is, let's say. Mm-hmm. And I want to say also, when white people say, first of all, nobody should be saying all lives matter, because that's bullshit. You know exactly what you're doing. You're undercutting the movement, Black Lives Matter. There's a whole reason why we're saying Black Lives Matter is because they've been treated like they don't matter. So that angers me right away. And it always has. But when Caucasian Americans say, oh, I didn't know we still had racism in America. I had no idea it was this bad. I want to call bullshit right there. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Maybe you weren't being affected by it daily, but there is enough stories being reported that finally make it to the surface that damn well that that's the tip of the iceberg. So everybody is responsible for this in America. And so we all have to make the change. And it's this, I think right now, it's more of like a white America awakening to what's been going on before we had video cameras that were, videotaping everything. But don't pretend like you didn't know. But now it's time to do something about it.
Yeah, I think that there's just listening to you, Mädchen, it made me think about how there are times when we get to be the storytellers. There's other times where we're supposed to listen, and there's times where we're just supposed to support. And I think, that it's not that those are all siloed kind of things, but when we get a chance to make the stories, I think we're listening to everybody else. I mean, the part of it is just making it actually collaborative. But yeah, there's times when you just know you're supposed to show up and support the others.
Yeah.
Great question. Okay, we have another question from Kayla Sutton. For everybody, what advice would you give to actors or filmmakers during this time, specifically with quarantine and the lack of auditions and work? Good question.
Well, let me say Kayla Sutton, who is cute as a button. Your little picture right here.
I know.
The one thing that I can tell you is studying your craft is still something you can do. So there are still online classes. There are still Zoom classes. I just spoke at a director's Zoom the day before yesterday. So there are still spaces and places where you can still study. The other part about that is, you may be able to still do some creative things with your iPhone. I mean, the crazy thing about creating content is that it just seemed like 5 minutes ago that wasn't even an option. And not when I started being an actor, you could not, because I don't know what I'm saying. I'm telling my age. We had a flip phone, huh? There was nothing you could do with the flip phone, let alone make a movie.
Yeah.
So I think that you just have to be creative, and there are so many spaces and places where your content can live, on these different platforms. So stay active and don't get weary in well doing. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say just having the guts to have stepped behind the camera I think it saved me through this anxiety driven, will I ever work again? Same thing like you're saying, Niecy, it's get creative. If you're feeling like there's just no opportunity for auditions or getting in front of people, find an amazing scene that you love and film yourself and create this amazing tape that as soon as you can send it to anyone, maybe they'll look at it and say, oh, wow, she might be great for this part when this starts casting again. Or use your iPhone and create a movie and create your own YouTube channel and put out your own content. Why not? This is the time to do it.
Yeah. Jessica, you got any words of wisdom?
What the others said was fantastic. And I liked what Niecy said about how honing your craft is never wasted time. And I feel like a lot of times when things are really up and running, we're always scrambling for time to put in the thought, to put in the kind of deeper work. So there's some silver lining there. As far as like the lack of work, that's the thing that's tough. Just everyone trying to keep everything afloat, and so trying to stay focused on the things where you're going to get some return for it. I think working on your craft is the best advice.
I mean, it also feels like once production does turn on, and Kayla, I presume that you're either an actor or a filmmaker, there's going to be a huge rush, right? There's such a need. First of all, there's such a demand among audiences. Yeah. People are dying to see new content. And then on the production side, I know personally from like talking to the networks and the studios all the time, they are just dying to get going. That's maybe not dying is a bad word at a time of a pandemic, but they are just eager to get going and are ready to go. So it feels like there'll be a lot of work once we can start working, if you can hang on.
And just to play the optimist too, the arts always survive through depressions, war times. People look to the arts for inspiration and to fill their hearts and their soul, and then the storytelling can come out of it. So I would say to all artists out there, hang on to hope and be optimistic. Our industry will survive. It may change and look a little different, but it's don't give up hope.
That's terrific. Okay, I think we have time for one or two more questions. Let's see what we got. from Giovanna. I'm going to say your last name wrong. Araujo. Okay. That's my best attempt. My question is, what still helps you to keep hope? Well, that's to Mädchen's point. What helps you to keep hope?
I would say for me, it's my faith. My faith that things will always work out in the end, you know, and when you go through things, a lot of times it's an opportunity for growth. So I don't get in a hard place and just lay down and say, well, that's it. I keep my hope because I know that if I learn this lesson, it's going to make me exponentially stronger as an individual, more open as an artist, and give vent to me being able to share what I've learned with somebody else. So it's just like having that positive attitude and that positive way of thinking that breeds hope for me.
Beautiful.
I saw an amazing episode of Kamau Bell's United Shades of America just last night. And he tackles systemic racism in this new episode, which is what he did in his very first episode, which is fascinating. He went to go visit the Ku Klux Klan, which was fascinating. But it was an interesting episode, and I would say that what he in the very end interviewed his mom, who had been an activist through her life, and she said something that really hit home to me, and it was that what's happening in our country and probably around the world is the people who are in power want to stay in power, and they create ways to divide people and keep people separate. So that's when they bring in racism or, you know, pitting different types of people against each other. So if we really focus on coming together, we're all in this together. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. That's when the power comes together, and then the people can insist on a government or a world that reflects them and not just the people that sort of hold the purse strings. So my hope is through all of this awakening is that we really come together and we really learn about each other. So my hope lies in a communal country and a communal globe.
Yeah. I would say similarly, I feel hopeful in the groundswell of support for the Black Lives Matter movement, where you can see it you can see it at a level that we just haven't seen with protests in the past, demonstrations in the past. And so, you know, even in our little town, which is, I never thought I would see this, but, you know, hundreds of people came out, and I saw our kids' teachers, I saw their classmates, and we were looking at each other like, oh, I didn't know this about you, that you cared about these things. And because we hadn't had the conversation before. And that's something that I do think feels like a sea change, that there's connections being made, conversations being had, not where everybody agrees about everything, but just the fact that that is open makes me think that when we get to be with each other for real, there will be a lot of good work being done.
Mm. Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on, talking about hope and faith and support for one another, and this desire that we all have to see a better world through the storytelling that all of you guys do, and all of the wonderful people who are watching, who are aspiring to become women like you, and who will be. And so we're here for all of you guys out there. Mädchen and Jessica and Nissi, I cannot thank you enough for giving us your time and your honesty and your heart and soul. It really means so much to all of the people who are watching. And of course, thank you for the work that you give the world, most of all. So we're all going to get through this together, as you've all expressed, and we hope to stay in touch and to see and to continue supporting one another. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I loved listening to you guys and just getting to know you a little bit through this. Amazing.
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
So we're going to say goodbye to our lovely panelists. And for those of you who are able to join us, if you have a full access ticket, you can come continue the conversation on our Slack channel, the Wrap Connect channel. And we look forward to staying in touch and hearing back from you. Thank you all for being here and for participating. And we'll see you next time.